world's thinnest and world's biggest smartphones tussle with a sinister something called digital turbine ignite. And Stephen Hawking uses SwiftKey. The news cycle might be slowing as we approach the end of the year, but it's no less compelling to geeks like us. All that and more in the 90 minutes ahead from WERS in Boston. This is episode 125 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast where we discuss news and opinion from the world of mobile technology, smartphones, tablets, smartwatches, and beyond, all that stuff you wished you had when you were a kid. From the business end of a very fancy-looking audio board and a mic stand worth more than my computer, I'm Michael Fisher. I'm joined by a man who's less awake than he wants to be, but more put together than I can handle. Chief News Editor Stephen Shank. Hello.
We're, like 90 seconds into the podcast now, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through my coffee. This does not bode well for the rest of the program, man.
Well, that's all right. We're having so many technical issues here, I don't even know what podcast I'm on.
Whee!
And by an old friend with a new smartphone in the mail, our former editor-in-chief, Brandon Miniman. Good day to you.
You always keep track of what phones are coming for me, aren't you?
Very, very important for me to know what mobile device you're carrying. And behind the board across from me, putting up with more countdown delays than an Orion spacecraft, our producer, Jules Wang. Gentlemen, the time is precisely 12:08 p.m. Good afternoon.
Well, that's not entirely true if you're in another time zone.
You know, the Eastern time zone is the time zone we talking about. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Both you gentlemen are frozen. I can no longer hear myself.
Oh, good.
And I think we're in the midst of a huge disaster.
Yay! Chaos!
Yeah. I've got
We
nothing.
can hear you, so that helps.
I have no activity on the board. Yeah? Well, that's terrific.
In case of
can't hear them
chaos,
either.
I have a lot of canned
That's
goods. I can share it with all you guys.
While Jules irons out the difficulties here, I will tell you something. I'll tell you all a little story. We're at a new studio, and there's my voice back in my ear. So that randomly solved itself. That's interesting. It may be an internet connection. Everything is new today. So I'll tell you the rest of the story. But while I can hear myself, this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly is brought to you by Squarespace. Are you building a website of your own? And Squarespace is exactly what you're looking for, a company that makes it fast and easy to build your own professional website, portfolio, and online store. Squarespace gives you the drag-and-drop tools you need to build a fantastic-looking website. And because it's a modern company, your site also gets modern and responsive design. So it looks just as good on a tablet as it does on a Toshiba laptop. Anyway, if you're a long-time listener, you already know my favorite part. You get 24/7 support based in Dublin, Portland, in the Big Apple. Plans start at just $8 a month and include a free domain name for those who sign up for a year. And big news here. If you're listening to this, you get a free trial, no credit card required, and 10% off your first purchase. I think that's pretty rad. Save some money, build a great website, visit squarespace.com/pocketnow and enter offer code POCKETNOW at checkout. Squarespace, better websites for all. Stephen, why don't you talk for a while?
Yes, sir. So we last week had a really great podcast where we covered a ton of listener mail, and we hope a lot of you continue to write in following that. We're going to cover some more listener mail on this edition of the podcast. But if you don't feel like waiting for us to get around to some topic that might not be the most newsworthy, on the pulse of things, and something's just on your mind right now, come on to the Hangouts, into the Q&A section, and drop your question live. The other listeners can vote on their favorites, and the ones that get the best responses, we will try to cover on the air. So please let your voice be heard. We want to respond to you, so give us the questions. We will answer them.
Yes, indeed. And if you're watching this after the broadcast, folks, if you're watching this on YouTube but it's not live, check the description below. See if there's a link down there to the high-quality podcast. That's an audio-only podcast, but it's not going to have any of the hiccups that this show is going to have. And do us a favor and leave a review wherever you're listening to the show, iTunes, Stitcher, podcasts, wherever. But don't do it based on this episode because it's probably going to be kind of a train wreck. Like I was saying, everything is new. The internet connection is new. The microphones are new. The computer's old.
That looks like your old micro. Is that a fancy?
The Blue Yeti next to the new fancy microphone is picking up the high-quality feed, and it's obscured by the big microphone.
You're not using the super expensive microphone to get the high-quality feed?
So the Blue Yeti is good enough for the high-quality feed?
Yeah, but if you have the Rolls-Royce there...
Yeah, but you have to understand, 20 seconds ago, or 2 minutes ago, there were 20 seconds of utter silence where I wasn't even sure if you guys were on the planet anymore.
We could hear you
shoving this microphone in my mouth. And the internet connection is, I don't know what it's doing. And also, I don't even know where I am in the city of Boston. I'm in a basement somewhere. No, this is
have you smelled the microphone yet? You can learn a lot about microphone by smell.
I haven't smelled it yet. It doesn't smell like beer. It actually smells nice. Everything is so great in here. I'm going to shut up. Listen. We got to talk tech, and to do that, we need to ask Brandon Miniman to step it up a little bit because it was his suggestion that we kick off the show with an old tradition called the Thought Thread. Jules, do we have a cue for the Thought Thread?
Whoa! Look at that thing.
Oh yeah.
I like the Note 1 next to the Eiffel Tower. It's very.
Do you remember that graphic, Brandon?
Is it?
I used that in a piece. I used that in a piece called like the case for Jumbophones. It was like one of the first. It was a 2012 piece, so that's why it's a Galaxy Note 1. And I used it because I understand that you're going to be talking to us about big phones today, Brandon Miniman. What's on your mind, and how can we help? You're on the air.
I think I do need some help because I thought I had it all wrong. And then now I'm questioning whether I had it right in the beginning. So you guys got to help me out.
Wow, you were lost, sir.
It's been a rough couple of weeks going back and forth. So I was of the opinion that smaller phones were better simply because, of course, phones should be small. They fit in your pocket. They should be one-handed friendly. You should be able to text while you're walking down the street. And so I went through a period where I was using smaller phones like the Nexus 5, which when it came out seemed big, and the iPhone 5 and so forth. And then this fall I got the iPhone 6 Plus. And I loved it. And to me, it kind of reversed everything that I thought about big phones. It went from of course your phone should be small to of course your phone should be big, because bigger phones more so fulfill this promise of a device that feels like a computer in your pocket. It feels like you can do more on a bigger phone, even if it doesn't have any features to take advantage of the bigger screen, like most phones don't, except for the Note series. Mm-hmm. So my train of thought changed, and then I got the Nexus 6. And the Nexus 6 seemed to have caused a problem. It's so big that it doesn't fit into a cup holder. So, if you wear skinny jeans all the time like me, and you get into your car and you sit down, you feel like this awkward thing in your pocket, and you want to put it in the cup holder, but you can't do that with the Nexus 6. The second problem with the Nexus 6 is that it's got a lot of heft to it. And so when you're holding it by these really thin Moto X-like edges, they kind of dig into you after a while. And they're metal, so they're not very forgiving. There's no flex in them, so it's really hard to hold. So I did something weird. I picked up the Nexus 5 that I've had that has Lollipop on it, and I used it, and I loved it. But it was almost like cheating on my wife, because the Nexus 5 isn't a big
exactly screen. Like that.
The Nexus 5 isn't a big screen phone, and I liked it. I really liked it. So I guess the question for me is, do I actually like big screen phones because I feel like I'm more productive, or do I like small screen phones because they feel more friendly in the hand? Or am I just a confused little man?
You're so conflicted, Brandon, and I understand. But I must admit to being a little surprised, because I went through this same crisis, and you're not alone, brother. But I went through this crisis in like 2012 or something. I mean, you've used the Notes, haven't you? How is this a new thing for you?
Well, it's a new thing because I didn't give big phones really a chance. I used the Note 3 and the Note 2 and the Note 1, and all of those phones, I love the novelty of it. I used them for a few weeks, And then I concluded that they're just too big. No one should have such a big phone. So I kind of revisited this late. It's kind of like a late puberty, I guess.
This is dangerously veering into things don't matter until Apple does them territory.
I know that's going to be brought up, and I it's a valid complaint, but no, it makes sense, Brandon. You've always been an iOS kind of proponent, and it makes sense that you wouldn't, really give large format devices a chance until Apple did one.
That argument doesn't hold water because the iPhone 6 doesn't bring anything really better to the table except better battery life, which I do like. But besides that, it's just bigger apps in a lot of cases. Some apps have been optimized to fit more screen content on the display. But I think, I don't know. I mean, I had the same positive feeling about the Nexus 6. Like, I felt like, oh yeah, I've got, I can read a whole email in one view. I don't have to scroll, or like I can fit so many icons on my home screen. This is awesome. I can finally put widgets here without scrolling over to screen 2, 3, 4, and 5. But those mega size issues kept me from really liking it. The cup holder thing and the chafing fingers problem.
Can I pass a little judgment here?
Yeah,
this phone should not be in your cup holder when you're driving. That's far too tempting to use it. It should be somewhere where you can't access it.
We talk like I use a different car all the time because I'm renting zip cars, and the center console always has a different design, and I always have a different phone. So sometimes the fit is like perfect in the console, and sometimes it just falls over, and because I use them to navigate, right? But that's a reason that you want to have a good big screen on your phone, GPS navigation.
Well, no,
No. I'm not making fun of you, Brandon. I'm saying these are legitimate points. Email, extra rows of icons, extra space, extra widgets, and ideally you want your manufacturer to have taken advantage of the canvas. But I just went from the Nexus 6 to the Moto X this morning, Brandon, and I had a similar crisis. I was very happy to be back on my Moto X, but also missed the larger screen size almost instantly.
Okay, so Michael, you're using the Moto X again. Steven, what are you using?
Nexus 5.
Nexus 5. Speaking of the Nexus 5, did you get the OTA update to Lollipop?
I've been ignoring it for the past couple weeks. I wish I could dismiss the notification permanently.
You should ignore it. I cannot believe the crap fest that...
This is why I'm resisting it. How bad is it?
It is so bad.
Yeah.
This 24-hour must reboot your phone thing is unbelievable. And, it's funny because...
Oh, what do you mean by that? I'm not up on this.
The phone just gets so slow. Well, first of all, it's buggy. Well, it's not that buggy. It's okay. But the phone slows down after 24 hours.
Oh, so you have to clear the slate every day or so.
Every day or so. But it's funny because the Nexus 6 doesn't really have these problems. I think because it's got
extra RAM.
Got extra RAM, powerful CPU. I think it kind of covers up these problems. But it looks like 5.0.1 is on its way out.
Now I feel a little badly. So I'm trying to get my mom a cell phone, and I hooked her up last weekend with my old Nexus 4 just so she could play around with it on Wi-Fi. She's never used a smartphone and get a feel for what it's like. And I put the factory image of Lollipop on the Nexus 4. I've never used it. I sort of dropped it off. I handed it to her. Is she going to be complaining to me this thing is unusable, slowing down every day?
After this call, you need to call your mother, tell her you'll take her out to a nice dinner, and apologize to her in person.
I'm so sorry, Mom. Let's go buy an iPhone.
I don't know how Lollipop is on the Nexus 4, but I have to assume that the situation's a little worse than it is.
I assume, yeah. If it's as bad on Nexus 5, it's going to be the same problems, but magnified by the slower processor. Oh, that's fun.
So anyway, I was hoping you guys could give me a final answer on whether big phones are better than small phones, but it doesn't look like we're going to come to that.
I'm still a big small phone fan.
I'll weigh in on this, and Stephen, you finish it out for us. I think that it is surprisingly easy to get used to bigger phones. I don't think it's as easy to get used to smaller phones if you're used to the bigger ones. So I think this is a one-way street. I think once you've experienced a big phone, there's really no going back. So I think if you want to be able to keep a space open in your life for compact smartphones, if you don't want to go to the phablet territory, because you'll miss it real hard.
We lost you for a second.
Yeah, am I back for you?
We
gentlemen?
lost you there for about 10
Yeah, I know. I saw what happened. So I'm just saying it's a one-way street. Go big. Don't go big if you don't want to go back. Go ahead, Stephen. What's your answer?
Yeah, I can appreciate the ease of use, the feeling you get of more power, more closer to a mini tablet experience you get from a phablet. I can't deal with the physical size of it. I already find a 5-inch phone to be a little cramped in pockets. I can't sit down with a phone in my pocket without freaking out, even at 5 inches. I'd feel a lot more comfortable with something in the 4-inch space. And if I want a bigger device, that's why I carry a tablet. I mean, if I have a bag on me, I just slide it in there. I can get by on the smaller phone. I don't find myself missing a larger screen when I'm dealing with a 5-inch device. I can appreciate why some people do enjoy the phablets, but for me, they're just too unwieldy.
Yeah, but Steven, have you ever actually spent like a month with a big screen phone?
No, I mean I have this first gen Note sitting over here. I tried carrying it in my pocket for a day or two. It's just the Nexus 5. It feels too big for me as is. I find myself craving a smaller device. I mean, if an old HTC One, an M7, a 4.7-inch screen sounds like probably where I want to shoot for, and I'm just sad that there's not so many good flagship options in that space anymore.
One day, kids, we will be able to have this both ways. Truly,
Yeah.
we will have a device that can simultaneously have a small screen and a big screen when you need it. Tablets will no longer need to exist, and the future will be upon us. So
It'll be like a flexible scroll. You can stretch it out as big a screen as you want.
something
You know
like
what?
that. I don't think it's going to be a flexible thing because, like, are you going to carry like a rolled up?
Right.
Like
Are you
going
going to carry a scroll around like
It'll
it's
be like
it's
two
984
pencils. And you
AD?
stretch it out. Yes.
Yeah, no.
Abacus is going to come back.
I don't want that. No. You know what's funny? I like this thought thread because it really, really, really matches nicely with our closing. What's it called? Our tough spot.
Yeah.
We haven't done in a little while. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But let's come back to this in that. But Brandon, what do you think you're going to do? Are you going to heed our advice?
I don't think there was any specific advice given.
Yeah, no. You're right. Stephen might have given some advice. I was basically just saying you're doomed forever.
Yeah. You were saying that you're going to have to go. I don't know. I really want to try the Note 4 as my last splurge for 2014. I'm having a Moto X come tomorrow, which I think, thinking about it now, I think is more small than it is big, even though when it came out, we were like, oh my god, it's a phablet, no!
Right. No, exactly. I was having the exact same reaction, man, because when I moved back into it today, it feels so tiny compared to the Nexus 6 and everything else.
Jesus.
But I looked at the review initially, and I was like, man, I came down on this thing real hard, but that's because comparing it to the original Moto X, it is kind of a monster, and I would like to pick up the original Moto X now and be like, wow, this feels small now,
I was just looking at one of the mails we're going to get to later was asking about a phone that uses the 30-pin accessory connector, and I looked up the Wikipedia article on this thing because it didn't ring a bell which models had this, and I saw the Dell Streak 5 had this thing, and I was remembering this seemed like the biggest, most
I remember. That's so funny.
Device. Oh, 5 inches! My God, that's like
the Streak 5 was referred to as a tablet, if I remember.
Yeah. It wasn't classified as a phone, even though you could use it as a phone.
Can you imagine? How dumb were we? I mean, I think the bezels on the Streak 5 made it kind of a big footprint device. So it felt more tablet-ish, but it's crazy how we've redefined things over time. And you know what? I don't think we're done yet. I think some people have called that 6 inches is as big as phones are going to go. Although you got the 6.4 Z Ultra. I mean, if you look at the Nexus 6, they could fit a bigger screen in the same size. They go a little wider, a little taller. I think.
Yeah, we'll see like with the Notes, where the physical size stays roughly the same, but they keep shrinking that bezel down, making the screen a little bigger.
Or you can do exactly what the Aquos Crystal did.
Oh, yeah.
And we have one in the office now. Jules is going to be taking a look at this for us. And the Aquos Crystal, I will remind everyone, has a screen that extends all the way up to the very top of the casing with almost no bezel to speak of. And you'll notice there's not an earpiece on here. It's because it's a piezoelectric ceramic conductor behind the glass. So if someday they're able to do speakers without ports or manage to fit speakers behind the display, we could have a phone with no bezel all the way around, and you wouldn't even have to do the selfie cam because they'd find a way to do that without taking pictures up your nostrils. All
I
the
want to
time.
see all phones rocking those piezo bone conductor elements, just if only to discourage people from holding their phone like 6 inches from their face and doing speakerphone.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm guilty of that though too, because I want to feel like I'm in
sure.
the '60s version of the future. You understand?
Hey, Michael, just one more thing on the Moto X. You haven't gotten the OTA Lollipop update, right?
I did. I just got it last night.
Oh, how is it?
It's actually quite smooth, much smoother than it is on the Nexus 6, I noticed, which is puzzling to me, but I suppose we are dealing with a few less pixels in the display. And the encryption thing, Stephen, maybe you can answer this for me. Is that automatically included on all Android Lollipop OTA downloads, or is that just on devices?
I believe you have to, if you're updating from an older Android, you have to explicitly enable it.
Yeah.
I was reading different things about this, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I heard that if you hard reset after you install Lollipop, it does the encryption automatically, and there's no option. But maybe that's different.
I'm not sure what the answer is, but I guess we'll. I'm sure someone will write in and tell us A, what the answer is, and B, you should have done your research. Well, this wasn't on the rundown. Now we're so far afield from the thought thread. Brandon, you're hopeless. Stephen, you're very smart, and it's time for you to start telling us the news. And Brandon, will you please tell us what you ultimately decide to do when you get your Moto X, which is colored in what way?
Okay. I mean, there will never be a conclusion to this story. I will always just get the next phone because that's all I do all day.
That's all we all do. But what color is your Moto X, though? It's got a what, cognac back?
Thank you for allowing me to talk about that. I was waiting for that. It's cognac leather, which is like brownish red. It's got blue accents, and you've got the blue accents, Michael, on your.
I surely do, friend. I've got blue on my portable stereo.
Yeah, so that's that, and I'm excited.
Dude, I'm excited too. Cognac is a beautiful shade of leather for that device.
And it's a good beverage too.
It is a good beverage too. I would have some right now. But beverages are not allowed in this studio. That's how.
What?
Kids?
No
seltzer?
No, yeah, no, I know. Jules is doing some crazy video.
Whoa, look at that bird's eye view.
Oh my God, look at what's happening here. Oh,
this is the exact opposite of the perspective we had from Adam last week. The 3/4 from below.
Yeah, where was looking up at like from his Adam's apple.
Yeah.
With a heavily backlit.
That's
Before
why
we
they call
get
him
too
Adam.
far in trouble, I'm gonna ask. Oh, that was a clever joke. Please, Jules, sound the news annunciator so you can get us out of this mess. Steven, tell us what the F is going on, brother.
Is that a news ticker? You guys are just like...
I know.
You're on the show.
Oh, let's see what we got here. Speaking of big phones, the problems they cause, and potential solutions, we had, and speaking of Adam Dowd, we had him look at one of the new phones from Alcatel, the ONETOUCH Pop Mega. This is a big old phablet of a beast here, beast of a phablet, but it comes with a little trick that might make it a little more usable for people who make a lot of phone calls. Is it comes with this thing called the Buddy, which is a Bluetooth connected kind of dumb phone remote-ish thing. It just connects to the ONETOUCH Pop Mega, lets you take your voice calls on it. You can also do texting, I believe. And we're getting not the best reception from this in the comments on this post. It seems that people are really resistant to this idea of a separate phone you have to carry around just to make voice calls comfortable to use on a phablet. And it's reminding me, didn't HTC do the same thing last year with the phone? Like one of the one variants for China.
Yeah, it was their. It wasn't the. Oh, what did they call it? It wasn't the Fetch. That was a little remote control thing.
Yeah.
They called it something. It was
something.
Yeah, whatever the HTC brand was. Yes, they did do a little handheld. It was very much like this. Yes.
The Mini Plus.
Yeah.
There we go. I kind of liked that guy. I like this idea of you don't necessarily need to do all your voice calls directly on the phone. This is like the extension of the Bluetooth earpiece, but instead of being glued to your ear, it's a handset. Really, and some of the complaints I saw about this were people saying it's too small. So we go from a phone that's too big to this, and I get the desire to make it very, very portable. You can just slip it into your pocket or into another part of your bag. You don't want to carry around two big devices. But at the same time, I might appreciate a little more substantial, even like a retro, like phone handset looking thing. It's just, I mean, I know they make these as Bluetooth accessories, but it's weird that we're seeing multiple manufacturers do this, where they're pairing the really big with the really little. I don't know if the combination's solving the problem or just distracting us from it, but
Yeah,
it's neat. I would love to carry around one of these and give it a try.
this strikes me as one of those things that, you know, if history had been different, some kind of alternate past, the tablets came out first, and then this thing came out as an accessory to your tablet so you could take calls on it, and then eventually someone miniaturized this thing into a little thing that fits in your ear, and they called it a Bluetooth headset. You know, this seems like a backwards evolution of technology in some ways. But I cannot deny being a little bit seduced by the notion. I like the idea. I think we all like the idea of returning a little bit of simplicity to a very complex mobile world. Like you were saying before, Stephen, you like a smaller phone. You don't want a big phablet. You want something that's...
No, I want a smaller phone that has all the features of a big smart device. I wouldn't want to just carry a little dumb phone like this. I've been down that road. That does not lead to fulfillment.
But isn't part of carrying a big phone sort of feeling like you can do anything with it, mainly because those big phones typically have the best specs you can find?
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
annoyingly so.
Yeah, I mean, it's irritating, but I mean, I don't know. So, okay, Dowd has a wonderful write-up on this. We don't want to do his job for him. We just want to make sure everyone knows that story is there. Go read that thing. And I read it this morning. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought this thing was going to be not very fun to read, not because of Adam, but because of the subject matter.
You know, in a way, our pants have evolved to be perfect for this kind of setup. You've got the main pocket and then the little pocket, right? Inside the big pocket.
Yes, the change purse.
Yes,
I
think
pocket watch pocket.
This, with some modification in your pants, you might be able to fit this little guy into your change purse, coin purse.
You know what we need to see, and this is long overdue, because yeah, we want to use change purse. You want to put your pocket watch in there, your tiny phone. Why are these not on both sides of pants?
That's
a
only
great
on the right
question.
side.
It's a good question.
We gotta talk to Mr. Levi.
Well, can I?
Not Joe, but
not Joe,
the other guy.
but Mr. Gene Levi, right? Oh, can I advocate when I can rarely do this because I'm usually in a 4x6 booth. But if you're watching the show, if you're listening to the show, I'm sorry you won't see this. But check it out, dudes. I like this pocket right here. This the thigh pocket. You know what I mean? With the little
Cargo?
zipper.
You're advocating cargo pants.
These are not cargo pants, friend.
Are they not?
Cargo
Because-
pants have cargo pants have pockets sewn on the outside and they puff out and they're big. Like this wouldn't be puffing out if I didn't have my LD West wallet in it. What happens when I take that out? It's smooth and sleek.
Stealth cargo pants are still cargo pants.
Listen,
cargo
it's,
pants,
it's a Napoleon Dynamite tots pocket is what it is, complete with this. And I think
it's pretty
every
deep.
cargo pant should
I think you
have
could fit a jug of milk in there, right?
yeah, if you wanted to. So listen, before we start talking about anything else, what the hell else is going on in the rundown? We're never going to have this cargo pants discussion again, Stephen. You and I are at war.
No, I have cargo, like it's shorts. I in no way am advocating that these are good things people should be wearing. I'm owning my fashion faux pas.
All right. I'll confess to mine as well.
What's
the next thing on the rundown?
Next thing on the rundown, Motorola. Motorola news. We are looking at rumors about a device that could be the company's next flagship, a big old phone, sort of like so we're talking about the same form factor as a Nexus 6, so pretty much a 6-inch display, but with some hardware that could put the Nexus 6 to shame. Big old numbers like 4 gigabytes of RAM and, well, up until recently, what was feeling like the hottest SoC on the market, the Snapdragon 810. The news story out this morning talks about possible issues with the hardware, overheating, GPU problems, just poor performance in general. Remains to be seen if this will spell a big bump in the road for 2015's flagships, including what this model would be. But if we just ignore that Snapdragon issue, the rest of this sounds really, really interesting. It could have a huge battery up near 4,000 milliamp hours. So it's kind of like it's taking some elements from the Droid Turbo, like the big battery, while taking others from the Nexus 6. And it's a really, really, really compelling set of specs. I don't know how much faith to place in them right now. It's also talking about this device being pretty far out, not landing till more towards the middle of 2015. So maybe a couple months from now we might see something a little more meaty, maybe with some actual like pictures or a leak to add some credence to this theory. But
I think
it might not be a Verizon exclusive either. This is presented as a Droid device, but that's not necessarily a given. Sorry, go on.
the 4 gigabytes of RAM
Gigabytes.
sounds cool because
Does it?
What?
Does it sound cool?
No,
Why
it
does
does.
sound cool?
It does.
Here's why. First of all, it sounds cool when you say it. Second of all, these 3 gigabyte RAM devices like the Nexus 6 and the Droid Turbo, they should be able to keep in memory the last 10 apps that you've used, so that when you go into those apps, they don't have to load. Right? I mean,
Yes.
I feel like we should be there yet. I guess 3 gigs is not enough, or maybe Android isn't designed to do that.
That's the thing, and this is not unique to Android. We see this in all the OSs. No matter how much hardware you throw at this stuff, none of this is coded well enough to take advantage of all of it. Because Brandon, what is the most infuriating thing? It's not a deficiency that you can explain away. These are things we understand. But when you have a device that is classed better than a lot of desktops from just 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it should be able to keep a web page in memory. I should be able to not have to wait for a reload when I access, a tab that I closed away from 5 minutes ago.
And that wouldn't. There's a parallel to that, so it's not unreasonable. And the parallel is your desktop computer. If you have enough RAM and you open Photoshop 2 days ago and you open it up today, everything loads up very quickly. If you have enough RAM.
There's a big difference there is the software on our computers, aren't we running native code for the most point? Where with these mobile devices, Android, everything's Java. And I know art makes things better, but there's still a level of interpretation being done there. It's never going to be direct comparison performance-wise. And I guess for the memory issue in general, I have some strong Luddite feelings about memory. I think that today's programs are just throwing RAM at the problem rather than necessarily taking the steps to use memory efficiently, like was a big priority back in the old days when memory was super duper expensive. We hit this point where it's cheap as anything right now, and it's a lot easier to just throw gigabytes at your apps than really make them super efficient. And that's fine. It's a different way of doing things. We do have to make sure that the operating system is smart enough to allocate and deallocate memory as needed. But 4 gigabytes of RAM costs nothing. If you're putting 2 or 3 in, pay the extra $1 or $2, whatever, maybe $8. It's not a lot of money to throw an extra gigabyte in there. And I'm just of the opinion, why not? It's not hurting anyone.
No, it is though. It is because it's creating the impression that the phone can do more than a phone with 2 gigs, and it really can't. I would like to run a contest where I invite someone to show me something that they can do on a 3 gig phone they can't do on a 2 gig phone when that's the only difference in terms of RAM. I mean, I don't see it. What is it? The Droid Turbo and the Note 4, right? Maybe the Note 4 we see that used adequately and maybe in a multitasking scenario, but on the Droid Turbo, I don't think that's used at all. I mean, not that I can see anyway, and I think that's frustrating. I think it's irritating when a device can become more appealing on the retail shelf just because it has a spec. It's like a 13 megapixel camera on one of the older HTCs versus
it's megapixels, it's everything.
Right, exactly. So this is nothing new, but it is because it's RAM, and I just don't care about more RAM unless you're going to use it more effectively. So this is frustrating to me, but it's also very predictable. I mean, it's like Verizon came out and they saw the Moto X. Well, this happened before the Moto X came out, but they were like, we want a better Moto X. Boom, Droid Turbo. We want a better Nexus 6. I can see Verizon saying that, and I can see Motorola saying, okay. And I can also see this device being Nexus 6. Go ahead,
it's starting
Brandon.
to remind me of the auto industry, where like they'll design a chassis and then they'll make the same car. It's basically the same car. Sometimes they do this across manufacturers.
Yeah.
It's basically the same car just with a slightly different body, and it's the cheap, economical thing to do. It kind of is at the expense of innovation because you're not making a new.
I mean, you're describing Android One right there.
Yeah, that's Android One, I guess, isn't it? Well, yeah. Same hardware specs. Yeah, just different bodies.
And while we're
It'd be
talking,
neat if we had that at the high end and in the U.S. here, but give it time.
and while we're talking about that segment of the space, that side of things, let's talk about this Moto E that's been rumored. This.
Yeah.
Now we have
Sorry
the Moto E
to
already.
sound so enthusiastic.
Yeah, you really did not sound too amped on it, but
It's the Moto E. I mean,
right, it's the Moto E. It's tough
and
to
not
get
only that,
excited
Moto
about
E,
it.
it's still a new phone. Do we really need a second gen already?
And you made the point of saying that it was only 6 months ago that the Moto E came out. And this is a good point, Stephen. But, it makes sense that one is already deep in the planning stages. And, it makes sense that we should start getting wind of this now. But I think this is exciting because the Moto E was semi-exciting just by virtue of it being so cheap and coming on the heels of Motorola's best-selling phone in history, the Moto G.
What concerns me a little bit is that the reports we've been hearing about this, and they don't mention a lot of spec changes, a slightly larger display. I'm not even sure if it is or if because people can't tell the difference between 4.3 and 4.5 by looking at it. I know I can't. But they did mention this SoC update. So the original Moto E had a Snapdragon 200, and that was fine. It helped the phone be very affordable. But this new rumor is talking about a possible Snapdragon 400, and we saw some benchmark data a little while back that we don't know if this is the Moto E, but just it depicted a unknown Motorola phone running a Snapdragon 410. So any way you look at it, we're talking about new hardware with new phone with slightly better hardware than the first gen Moto E. I'm concerned that's going to bump up the price. Probably not a ton, but the whole point of the Moto E was just how preposterously cheap it was. And anytime you're pushing it closer to Moto G territory, it's just going to make the phone that much less attractive. And
good point, Stephen. And didn't we see that happen with the Moto G, the second-gen Moto G?
Right, it was more expensive.
Right, and also on the Lumia line in Windows Phone land, you had the replacement to the 520 come out at a higher price point than the 520 initially came out at. So, was this just a headline grab for the budget? Was just like a land grab for the absolute bottom of the barrel, like cheap, very, very budget shoppers, and now everyone's going to kind of equalize a little bit? Or,
I guess I worry that this is shooting these companies. I'm worried this activity is shooting themselves in the foot a little bit. They've established these certain brands as the really affordable options. When they come back with these next generation versions of them, bump up the specs, granted, but also raise the price a little. I feel that is just opening the door for these competitors who we might have not given much attention to earlier. I'm thinking specifically of Blue comes to mind here. In the past, it was kind of a forgettable brand. It had Android devices that were, I believe, at least the few I looked at, were like rebrands of Chinese, white box phones. But now it's getting a lot of attention on Windows Phone with these really affordable handsets. So there was one for a Black Friday deal. I can't remember the price off the top of my head, but it was stupid cheap, like 40, 50, 60 bucks in there or something.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is going to maybe steal some of the sales away from the super affordable Lumias if they're getting replaced with still, quite affordable, but not nearly as low as these other guys. So it's a risk when you upgrade things.
I saw one of those in the Microsoft store the other day. I was getting the Microsoft Band, which was, we can talk about that again another time. But some people were gathered around the Windows Phone kiosk in the store, and I was like, what are they looking at? They're looking at this bright green neon-colored Windows Phone. I've never seen that before. Oh, it's from Blue? Crazy. And guys, I wanted to get a look at it, but do you know what happened?
Someone punched you in the head.
Well, yes, of course. No, but after that, and after I recovered and came back to the store, what was still happening was there was still a freaking mob scene around this phone. There were people actively buying the Blue Win Junior or the Blue Win something. So
or this
HD.
Black Friday price, I assume.
There's this battle for the low end, and there's a lot of people that are coming of age that want a smartphone, and their parents or they don't want to pay for a higher end phone. And there's so much at stake because more so than ever, once you get into the Google, Microsoft, or Apple ecosystem, you stay there and you spend a lot of money over a lifetime. So these lower end devices are really super enticing and are bringing people into whichever ecosystem, whichever poison they want to drink.
Yeah, very, very good call. But and the problem with covering that, as Jules brings up a point in the chat. He says, "Well, it would be great to cover these things more effectively." And you know what the irritating part about that is? no one wants to see content on this stuff. Like, but by no one, I mean a very small percentage of the audience wants to see coverage on this, and
But they don't aspire to these devices. It's not.
What's that?
They don't aspire to these lower-end devices.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you're putting out coverage like we are, like I was up, I got 2 hours of sleep because I was up until 3:30. Putting together the first cut of a review video, and that took most of the morning today to finish. And that's, these reviews take an awful lot of time, and when you're only getting a tiny segment of the market who's interested in something like the Blue or something like the Lumia 520, it's like.
Well, here's what's going to happen in the future. We can take pills that will be like sleep, so you'll be able to cover the lower end phones and the higher.
It's called modafinil.
I don't know if that's a future that I want to be a part of.
There's something like this, Stephen. Do you know something I don't?
Yeah, alertness promoting agents.
Oh, that sounds
Can
good.
you? Does it come in tasty liquid form? Because I don't like swallowing pills.
I don't think I can help you there.
Oh.
What's next on the old rundown here? I feel like we're not done with this subject, but we're done with this particular topic. What's up?
YotaPhone, finally!
The
How
YotaPhone.
long ago? Did you get to play with this in Barcelona, Michael?
Yeah, sometime back in the late 90s, I think I saw this thing, and they promised to release it, and I guess they're finally doing it now, huh?
Yeah, it's hitting 20 nations in Europe this week, I believe, or maybe next week. I know sales started at this. They had this London event to announce the phone. So definitely the UK. I know Russia's getting it. Pretty much half the nations in Europe will have it, and we've heard about international. It's international already. Further intercontinental plans. It's coming to Asia a little bit later, as well as Canada and Latin America, I think in January or early 2015.
We're last, right?
But they have not confirmed U.S. plans, as far as I know.
This is like the early 2000s where Europe got everything first, and we got everything maybe not at all.
I can see how it could be a hard sell. This is like nothing like we've seen on the U.S. market and in any market. Well, they had the first gen YotaPhone, but that had very limited availability. So what this is, if you're not familiar with it, is this has a OLED HD, I think 1080p screen on the front. Flip it around, it's got this e-ink display, like from a Kindle. So the display is persistent and only uses electricity when it's changing it, and it doesn't need a backlight. It just uses ambient light. It's reflective. So you read it. You can maybe put like directions on there, a map, notes you want to refer to later, and as you look at it, the phone can be asleep and you can still read the data there. So it has to use special apps. This isn't going to work with anything from the App Store, but Yota has its own software suite developed specifically to take advantage of this rear screen. The phone itself is not super affordable. It was like 500 some pounds. The Russian price worked out to like 6 something, I believe. But it's really interesting. There's nothing like this that we've seen, and eye-catching alone can definitely help a phone out. I don't know if this will have the appeal of some of the more mass market devices, but it's compelling.
It's going to cause mass wrist injury across the world. You see, people already are developing these carpal tunnel syndromes because of cramped thumb texting and stuff. Imagine having to flip your phone over, just to like, you're referencing a recipe, and then you got to change the thingy and then back over.
Hey man, my wrist. I've been working out my wrist for the last 2 years with the Moto X, firing up the camera all the time. So it's all right. It's all right. I'm ready.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, you probably don't do that much because the camera's no good, but.
Oh, zing. Well, listen, the YotaPhone 2 is going to see our review labs as soon as we can get it in there. But as we say, we're backed up, and also it's not an official U.S. thing yet, and it's hard to get, except it's not hard to get for everyone, but it's hard to get for us.
But e-ink is lovely, isn't it?
E-ink is awesome.
I still carry a Kindle. I hate reading long text on an LCD display. It's so much nicer on the eyes reading with that reflective display.
Easy on the eyes.
Yeah. Easy on the eyes, easy on the battery. I mean, my original thought thread was going to be about the Pebble, but because I got the Moto 360 and I kind of like it, but I kind of hate it. But e-ink, it's been surprising how people technology.
Well, Pebble's not e-ink, is it?
No, it's
not.
Right.
We thought it was going to be at first. Ended up being a really low power LCD.
It was
really?
mistakenly advertised as e-ink, but it's not. Yeah, no, it is. I still think it uses similar technology, but it's not. So e-ink is a brand name, and I learned this on the factory tour.
Right,
that
but electronic ink. We're talking about a display made of little spheres that are light on one side.
E-paper is the technical.
E-paper. So is it what is the Pebble?
Pebble is e-paper. It's not e-ink.
So it's the same thing, just a different brand.
But it's not like the same thing. Like they look very, very different in person. Effectively, they achieve the same function.
No. It's a transflective LCD.
What, on Pebble?
They're calling it e-paper, but it's an LCD.
They called it e-ink.
It can't possibly be an LCD. It would require a backlight.
No, transflective.
It has a backlight, and not all LCDs require a backlight. Brandon, you've used graphics calculators. Those are LCD.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think. But that's different screen technology too. The graphing calculators.
Remember the Game Boy Advance? That had a color LCD reflective display.
Well, Brandon, you may have unwittingly led us into a bit of a little segue here, because our next subject was going to be the Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Normally, I don't like putting these survey pieces in the podcast rundown because there's not a lot of meat to it. But I just found it interesting because the source is good. It's Fortune, and that was picked up by Cult of Mac and then us. And
it's a survey is interesting this time. We've seen this 10% number multiple times. First, just in analyst reports being thrown at us without any explanation where it came from or guesstimates. This is the first time I think we've seen the figure backed up by hard data, and the fact that it's matching all these earlier assessments is, I think, what's interesting about this. So what they're saying is 10% of iPhone users might be likely to pick up the Apple Watch when it comes out next year.
Which is a stupid survey. I mean, it's like they ask, hey, iPhone user, would you consider purchasing something cool in the future?
Well, I know, but at least I believe this is the survey that I was looking at when I noticed this, that they compared it to past surveys about when the iPad first arrived, and the response they got of just this general, would you be interested in buying this, ended up aligning very closely with the actual sales figures. So there's some precedent for this being accurate to a degree.
Yeah, and this also ran on the same day, or at least the same week, as our story about Windows Phone doubling its market share in a year or two.
Yeah.
And it's and then many commenters rightly said, yeah, but double of 2% is 4%, and that's not great for 4 years. And then people got into a fight. But none of the survey stuff is terribly meaty, but I still think that this is unchanged. I think the Apple Watch has the best chance of making a real crater in the in the smartwatch kind of penetration challenge, or adoption challenge rather.
Yeah, I have not seen any formal figures about what the adoption rate looks like on Android. I mean, we've seen a few sales numbers for individual Android watch products, but I don't have a sense for what fraction of regular Android users have picked up a smartwatch. I can't imagine it's anywhere near 10%. I would guess
No.
1, maybe 2.
God, I see them so rarely around here.
Yeah.
Boston, it's there's not much shortage of disposable income here. Jules' friend has one, but I mean, and my friend has one. Yeah, I have maybe 2 friends who wear smartwatches of, lots of acquaintances.
And we have to believe that the people we know are a little better connected better into technology than your average smartphone guy. So if we only know a few, then that does not speak well for the chance of your average American having one.
While we're talking form factor here, guys, I'm noticing something as we proceed here. We talked a little bit about phablets before. We talked about smartphones, but we didn't really talk about the difference between smartphones and tablets, in the sense that one can be taken more seriously than the other in a certain setting. Listeners, if you're listening to the show and not watching it, we're using a different camera angle for me today, and it's laying bare the fact that I am using my podcast assistant, which today is my Moto X, to look at the rundown as we go. But it looks like I'm texting the whole show. It looks to me like I'm not paying attention, like I'm somewhere else, and I'm like some gum-chewing teenager not paying attention in class. But if this were a tablet, guys, would you agree with me that I would look more like I was doing something official or legitimate? Isn't that weird? I've never really thought of that before.
I don't know, because when when I go to the local Starbucks, most people are using a laptop if they're doing work. If they're using a tablet, they're probably playing a game or reading some sort of content. So I wouldn't take you any more seriously if you had a tablet.
Well, if it's a tablet, what if it's a tablet with a keyboard dock?
Now you're talking. Now you're working hard.
What about this? What if I'm gonna be taking manual notes for the remainder of the show. What do you think?
But how would you search those notes if you wanted to?
Oh yeah, you're right.
With
I have to like.
eyes?
No, yeah, you have to like flip as quick as you can together. All right. It struck me as interesting.
Is there
What's
a
the next
share
thing in the
button
rundown,
on
Steven?
your notebook?
Oppo. We got our hands on the Oppo R5. It's been
That's
launched
right.
just a couple of weeks ago. This is the this is not the crazy camera Oppo. You don't get confused.
No,
this is the super thin Oppo.
Thinnest smartphone. And
Well, for now, there's already we're hearing about this 4.5, or is this guy 4.5? But there's already these titles never last for very long. But for a brief moment in time, the R5 is the thinnest guy out there. And
in the Q&A, Jaime's unboxing is of course just mouth-watering as usual, but even more so because this thing is so razor thin. And Jonas Gamao in the Q&A asks, is there really any point of building the thinnest smartphone? Your point is well taken, Jonas, but definitely there is, because while these headlines don't last long, saying something like world's thinnest will get someone's attention, and if you can get someone to pick up this phone, I think their attention will stay on it. But look at what Jaime is doing on the video. It doesn't look all that much thinner than the iPhone at 6.
Well, yeah, we're already in such a thin space here. We're talking 1 or 2 millimeters thin. Granted, it's getting to the point where it's like 10-20% of the phone's thickness, but even then, on this scale, it's hard to appreciate, even when you're doing direct comparisons, these infinitesimally small slices that are being carved out with these further iterations here.
I wonder, we're not there yet, but I think there's a point at which it doesn't matter. Like, for example, the difference from the iPad Air to iPad Air 2, even though it's like 1 millimeter, it makes a difference. You pick it up and there's dramatic difference. The Air 3, Air 4, there's a point at which it probably doesn't matter. There's a point at which it's probably... It takes away from the tablet because
Sure.
You want to feel something in your hand.
I'm just interested in it also from an engineering standpoint. I like to see companies pushing themselves into uncomfortable territory, knowing that they're going to be dealing with material constraints, having to make sure that this thing is still rigid enough to not be destroyed when you pick it up. And whatever techniques they develop in doing this hopefully will be applied to we always talk about whenever we see something push limits like this, why didn't you just keep the phone the same size, shrink everything internally, and put a bigger battery in there? Well, maybe this is what leads to that in another device, but you have to start somewhere.
You kind of saw that with the original Droid Max, right? I mean, the hardware, it wasn't that impressive of a device, but they took what was probably a thin device and just made a huge battery. It was a great phone. Hey, Michael, can I bring something up, please?
If you would, Brandon, please bring something up.
Something that has been happening throughout this podcast illustrates a point perfectly on how I feel about Android Wear devices right now. You're wearing the Gear S, right?
Yeah, I am.
You're working on the review, right?
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
So, okay, well, you're testing out. Throughout this podcast, your screen has gone on. I haven't counted, but a lot of times it's wasting your battery. It's distracting as hell. If you were in a dark environment, it would be like, pow, you want to see the time. No, I don't. Right now, it's on. It's on right now.
If you were outdoors and there were a bear, he would see that thing flashing at him and maul you.
My arm would be gone right now. I agree.
Bears and sharks, they're all attracted to lights. They're
But all right, so this is a good point. Now you're laying out the case for the negatives, right? And you know that there is a flip side to that, right? Like what is the one environment that you...
What is the one environment?
That's the mystery. Michael has frozen.
What environment where you possibly want to have the watch flashing on? I don't know. At a light.
What environment do you want the watch to accidentally show you the time when you don't want to see it? I can't imagine. I know when you're on a bad.
You guys were waiting in suspense for my entire for me to answer my own question.
We were about to answer it for you.
Are we back yet?
But there you are. Hello.
Apparently, I'm. Yeah. So. I understand what you are saying, Jules. I'm using the right mic, but I can't hear anyone because no one's moving. Everyone's frozen.
Oh no.
This university has an amazing amount of throughput, but not in this room. Not today.
This is why we need to invest. We need to invest in our schools and upgrade their lines to broadband. Finally, it's 2014.
This is awesome.
Or just use wired internet.
Because I'm seeing myself.
Oh,
there
echo.
This echo is great.
All right, kill that mic.
Oh, there you are.
All right.
We are professionals, folks. Do not try this at home.
Yeah, I told you. I warned you at the top of this show. If you just skip to right here, you're missing out on a great bit of ass covering at the top of the show.
Now, do you cut that out or do you leave that in these days?
Jules is going to cut that out. That's why the high quality version of the audio show is there. Jules,
it's going to be 7 minutes long.
Yeah, I know. For all his hand waving over there, Jules is in fact going to cut that out of the high quality version of the show, which makes it a high quality version of the show. But my point is, you want your watch to light up in the club or at the bar. So
that's what I said.
Ladies. Is that what you said? Yeah.
You want it flashing at the rave.
What? Wait, you impress the ladies by showing them an LCD on your wrist?
Glow sticks don't last forever, man.
Oh man, so
you know what it does? It lights up, and it always prompts the question, "What is that?" And more recently, it prompts the question, "Is that the Apple Watch?" And then you can have a conversation. So no, it's helpful in one circumstance, but you're absolutely right. That is the number one problem with every wearable is that the screen lights up unprompted because it thinks you're looking at it, and it's really annoying, and it should be fixed.
But at least on the Pebble, you can disable shake to light. Right.
On the Pebble, you need to really wail on it to get it to light.
Yeah,
so it's better all around.
Can you disable that on most smartwatches?
No, you can't.
Why?
I don't know if you can or not on Android.
That seems like a pretty obvious setting to put on there.
You can disable ambient screen, but you cannot disable. You cannot disable accelerometer, sensing motion.
Oh, that's awful. That's an oversight.
Yeah, it's the one
but
thing.
That's also totally in software and easily fixable.
Yeah, that's true. It could be fixed. It might be fixed in a Wear update next week. In fact, there was supposed to be a Wear update, today or yesterday?
Yeah, I can disable the wake up gesture. So on the Gear S.
Well, that's not an Android Wear device. It's Tizen.
No, it's not. It's Tizen. Yeah, which means, of course, what? Yes, you have 18 different settings items that you can burrow deeply into, and do anything you want.
It's just 18 apps available.
So, well, that too. There are actually more than I thought. Gear S is a weird beast, but let's move on. We lost some time with that technical issue, and Stephen, will you take us into developments, please? Tell us, is the first item here this carrier story?
Yeah, digital.
Or is it the it's DT Ignite.
Yeah.
Digital Turbine Ignite is a really crazy name for anything. Tell us what the story is. Why can't we get away from bloatware? And inform us, Stephen. Make us smart.
What some users had been noticing, this isn't necessarily a brand new thing, and I believe Verizon started with this on certain devices earlier in the year. But what we're seeing, this happened with the Note 4 on T-Mobile. Users, when installing the latest system update, not Lollipop yet, this is just a regular update, they noticed afterwards there were a few apps on their phones that they hadn't explicitly installed. And a little detective work revealed the culprit to be the service called Digital Turbine Ignite. It's put on phones by carriers to sort of streamline the process by which they load apps onto our devices. It can be used for preloading apps. In this case, it's something called post-loading. So what happens is Digital Turbine Ignite isn't constantly running, installing software. It has permissions to do so, but it only really kicks into effect when you install a system update. And along with that update, the carrier can tap a few apps that it once downloaded alongside this. Digital Turbine Ignite downloads those. It doesn't consume any, it uses data. It doesn't charge you for the data on your plan, so that's at least some benefit. I know, it's the tiniest morsel of, well, this isn't so bad. But it is putting software on your phone you didn't ask for.
And these apps aren't Facebook and Twitter. They're like...
it's like crap, freemium stuff.
Freemium stuff that generates revenue.
Exactly. All about revenue. This is more opportunities for the carrier to make money. It thinks by putting these devices on your phone after the fact, it's going to get an income stream from these. You can delete the individual apps. You can't remove Digital Turbine Ignite so easily without some rooting action going on. It's just a new way of doing the same old thing. This is just bloat in a slightly different form. The fact that it's happening after we pick up our devices makes it more noticeable, but it's really not substantially different than the preloading we've seen in the past. The software we didn't ask for. It's annoying that it's there. Until you stop buying devices through the carriers, it's never going to go away. Even I presented that as the option of how to fight with your wallet. Even then, that's probably not the end-all be-all solution, because the manufacturers themselves could put this on the phones. I mean, Samsung wants to get a revenue stream by drawing you to apps in the Samsung store or whatever. This could be just a way for it to load future apps designed to get your ad watching dollar. It's crappy. I don't know what to say. It's here. We have to deal with it.
Well, if that's the case, then let's move on.
Let's indeed. Let's see what else. Oh, our other bit of carrier news.
I'm sorry, everyone. I hit the mute button when I meant to hit unmute and vice versa. So I did have one thing to say about Ignite.
Did you have an opinion, Michael?
I did, and it's that I wouldn't mind this so much if preloaded carrier software were better made. And this is just kind of like the case with all bloat, in my opinion. But like, everything from Verizon's driving app to AT&T's ready-to-go service, AT&T Contact Manager. Oh my God, yes.
I've never opened it. What is it? How could it be better than the built-in Contact Manager? Please.
Exactly, and it's not, and it never is. But on top of that, most of these apps, and those are specific examples, and a lot of Sprint's software is just really bad. In terms of user interface, it's intrusive. The phone is instructed to bother you every time you do anything remotely related to any of those apps. So it's interrupting your user experience, and if it were doing that, once again, I wouldn't mind if it were a better experience, but it's offering you a worse experience. And one that often you have to pay for too, like the visual voicemail apps that you have to pay for.
And so there's a possible security issue. This wasn't really a focus of the story as initially reported here, but when you start looking at Digital Turbine Ignite and the way that it's trying to sell this service to the carriers, one of the big things it talks about is how this avoids the vetting process that you see with apps that would go through something like the Play Store, whereas this DT has to approve the apps, but it's still it's side loading. It's getting around the normal the verification. If you have, I don't know if you have with the Android that scanning ability where it will look for malware if you side load stuff. I don't know if that will be triggered by this.
Like Norton.
And the thing that's built into Android, where it can scan for malicious or known malicious signatures from secondary sources. But it's probably not. I mean, one would assume that the companies hooking up their ad deals with DT aren't interested in ruining that relationship and not making any money from it. But this is one more thing to be a little concerned about. That this feels icky.
It does feel icky. And if you look at the actual economics, right? So they deploy this to all these customers, and they hope to derive revenue from these customers. And generally, it will be between maybe $1 and $10 per year that they'll make from a customer. And it's kind of like a bell curve. Most people will generate through search revenue or through app installs or freemium crap, maybe $4 or $5. I think that the carrier should charge $6 to get a pure edition, kind of like Motorola does, to not have any of that.
Like with the Kindle, you can get your regular Kindle, or you can get Kindle without special offers. You pay $20 more, but you don't have any ads.
People love that. People love it because they get it. They understand that Amazon needs to make advertising revenue, but they also understand that they should have to pay a little extra.
But hold on. There is no legitimate reason why carriers should have an ongoing income stream. We're paying them for the phone service.
I don't know. I mean,
unless you argue this is somehow subsidizing our plans, which, considering the profit margins involved here, I can't believe is true.
I don't know the thing. It seems like carriers are making out like bandits, but I think the truth is that they're not. I think their infrastructures.
They absolutely are.
They are.
Money hand over fist.
I mean, most of these are public companies. You can check.
Yeah.
My guess is that over time it's getting. My LTE speeds have slowed down like by 75%, and I know AT&T is building more towers and they're trying to buy more spectrum and all this stuff, and that stuff's billions of dollars. It takes a lot of customers paying a lot of money over a lot of time to make that all work. plus this other stuff that they're doing. So I don't know if they're minting it like you think. I don't know. I'd say that they're not these days. Maybe they used to when there were fewer people with plans, and those people were paying like $400 a month for unlimited data plus 1 million calls and text. But I don't know.
Speaking of carriers, guys,
we need those hard numbers. They're out there.
If we're talking about carrier moves and making money, Sprint is trying to do some of it with this crazy promotion.
Are you texting again, Michael? Because you're looking at your phone.
Yeah, I'm Snapchatting, guys. I'm sorry. Just give me a second.
I just pulled up.
Jules, pass me that show.
Sorry, before we move on, I have Verizon Wireless. This is the Q2 2014 earnings. So I'm dialing.
Crystal, so that I can do an up nose shot.
Now. This is good.
Yeah, Sprint is offering to cut your bill in half, and the whole deal is bring us your Verizon or AT&T bill, and we'll cut your rate plan in half. On the surface, this seems like a really, really, really cool deal, but there are some catches. Number one, you have to trade in your old phone, which is not a big deal. You would be buying a new phone if you go into Sprint anyway. But we don't know exactly how much they're giving per phone, do we?
Sorry, what was that? I was looking at Verizon's numbers for its income there.
Oh, no problem. No, we don't know what Sprint is offering per phone on the trade-in, but
no, it's not. You're not getting money on the trade-in here. So how this works?
Account credit.
You have you have an AT&T Verizon plan. You go to Sprint. You show them your bill. They will look at this and say, okay, here is our plan that most closely matches the amount of data you were getting here and all this. We'll take whatever your old bill was and we're just going to cut it in half. But in order to get this deal, you have to trade in have to hand over all of the existing phones on the plan. You don't get a credit for that. You have to then buy all new Sprint phones. And they're not giving you you're not getting like a contract rate here. You're doing the installment plan. So you're paying full price for these guys over the term of the plan. And if you need new devices, it's probably not the worst deal around. If you upgraded it in the past year or so and you're not really looking to move on to a new phone, the money you're throwing into new devices here on Sprint tends to counteract a lot of the savings. In fact, there was a report that came out the day after this, where Sprint's chief financial officer even admitted as much, saying that considering the money you're spending on devices, the actual savings here might only be to the tune of 20% over the competitors, which is still it's decent, but
that was the CFO at a Merrill Lynch conference on Tuesday, I guess.
The worst part after doing this is you're going to be stuck with Sprint.
Yeah. Right, and this is the thing, right? Because you do have to keep in mind that the network coverage difference. You obviously have to get the network that works best for you where you live and work. But I thought it was important to emphasize that this is not going to cut everyone's bill in half, which maybe you expect when you see a promotion this bombastic.
It's easily too good to be true. But there's still a certain user. If you have a huge monthly bill, you have like a family plan with something with other carriers, you're paying $150, $200 a month. And you're also looking to upgrade to new devices anyway. And maybe you don't necessarily need you want fresh phones. You don't necessarily need the highest end ones. So if you can save a little money there by buying maybe a mid-range model, you're still paying full price. But there's the opportunity at least for savings. It's not going to be forever.
Like that, Steven. Fresh phones. I want that. That's the next website I want to buy. I want to buy fresh phones, fresh with a PH and phones with an F and a Z. Can we get that? Freshphones.net. Please look it up. SwiftKey. This is our final story in the news. SwiftKey is powerful enough to help even Stephen Hawking communicate. I love this headline. It's not entirely true, but the
SwiftKey guys, they use their algorithm magic here for a new software update for Professor Dr. Stephen Hawking's communication keyboard.
Which I've been thinking about for a long time, Stephen, haven't you? It's like Stephen Hawking's been using the same communications device on...
Yeah, and if you hear the stories behind at least the original, is really interesting. It's a lot of... it's completely custom, I believe.
I was just going to say, didn't he help build it? Or didn't he help design it at least?
I don't remember. I read a story on this once. That was a while back. But
So
this
what does
new
Swift
one
key
is going
do
to have
for
the
me?
same voice. That's the most important thing. It's going to sound exactly the same when he talks.
I was
But the big
wondering.
deal here is SwiftKey is using its predictive algorithm to they fed it everything he's written. It's SwiftKey
Wow,
learns
that's
from us. They preloaded it with all of his text here. It knows his writing style. I don't recall the exact figure, but it's predicting this ridiculous amount. It's like only 1 in 10 keystrokes have to be entered anymore because it's doing such a good job of you type one letter, it sort of knows what he's going to say next. And when you have extremely limited mobility, and it's already very difficult to enter text, anything that gives you even a 5-10% increase in your throughput is going to be a huge deal. So the sort of improvements SwiftKey's talking about sound really, really helpful for him.
But
I just want to see him become the next Bond villain. That's my important Hawking news for the week.
That's fine.
Oh,
of course, SwiftKey isn't the only keyboard that does this predictive.
No.
But
Yeah,
SwiftKey is very excited by this news, I'm sure. But I mean, just important to remember.
What a great promo tie-in.
Yeah.
We're going to move on and away from the news, but Stephen makes a good point about the Bond. There was a Bond press conference today.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it yet because I was too busy watching the Orion spacecraft not launch this morning.
It didn't launch?
No, it didn't. They had a boat stray into the downrange area, then they had wind exceptions, and then they had finally the batteries were running out on the onboard cameras, and they can't launch without sweet video. So
no good.
yeah. Damn wind, though. That wind will get you every time. Do you guys want to play a little game? Greetings, Professor Falcon. Would you like to play a game? Brandon, we're not role playing, so don't ask.
This doesn't involve role playing. Okay, then maybe I'll say maybe.
Okay.
The game is not to play.
I tell you what, Jules. Why don't we hit the button and bring us into Tough Spot? Been way too long since we heard that headbanging tune. This is a segment called Tough Spot. It's a segment about choosing the better of two typically unappealing alternatives. On today's installment, an old idea from the heady days of 2010. Let me set the stage for you guys. The iPad had just made tablets mainstream. People were going crazy because though it wasn't cheap, some people saw an opportunity to save a little bit of money. They said, hey, the iPad comes with a cellular radio if you want. You can get it with a data plan on a carrier, so I can just have this huge screen with me when I want to be doing something that requires that huge screen or any screen. So I'll use this for my internet access in public, and for my voice line, it's 2010. Hey, smartphone plans are still pretty expensive. I'm going to get myself a dumb phone, a little clamshell or something, and on like a $20 a month plan just for my voice calls. So I'm going to have a dumb phone and a tablet. Believe it, folks, I didn't make this up. This is what people were thinking, and I would be lying to you if I told you I didn't think about this.
I totally did this.
You've got to be kidding me. You did this?
This is before I had a smartphone proper, and my idea, I wanted to be connected, so I did it even more extreme than this. I did the super crazy budget option. I picked up a Kindle 2 3G, and I would use its free WhisperNet with the built-in web browser.
Oh,
my internet access.
This is one of the e-paper ones. This is one of the e-ink Kindles?
Non-existent refresh rate. It's 3G, yeah, but you're getting like the unused spaces in, I forget whose network it is, Verizon's or someone. It was ridiculously slow, but if you were patient, I could check my email for free, and I had the dumb phone. And life was okay. It was fine.
Wow, Stephen. That's impressive. I would like to have. Now, Brandon, you didn't do anything crazy like this, did you?
No. I didn't resist technology all along as Stephen has.
All right, so my question to you, gentlemen, is say it's modern day. We'll jump back in our time machine. Now we're back to the present day. But somehow you're still, hung up on this notion that this is what you want to do with your life. You don't want a smartphone, but you want a dumb phone and you want a tablet. Which ones do you choose, and why? Stephen, you have more experience in this area, so I'm thinking that you probably want to answer first. But Brandon, maybe you're chomping a bit. I don't know.
Brandon at it.
Oh, fine. Well, I'll give the obvious answer, which is probably the same answer as what you guys have. I would go with a Razer.
Oh, a Motorola Razr.
I stopped keeping track of the Razrs probably about 10 years ago, but I would take the newest model that has the best sound quality, maybe a good speakerphone, and then I would couple it with an iPad Mini 2, not 3, because the 3 is pointless, that has cellular connectivity, 64 gigabytes or something. That's what I would do.
An iPad Mini. Okay, all right, that's nice. That's a good portable solution. I dig what you're putting down. The Razr interests me. That's fun. You wouldn't pick something more modern. The Razr.
Yeah, I don't think they have a really new one there.
Okay, let me start again. I thought that dumb phones are generally. Do you guys have in mind a dumb phone that has been made in the last 3 years?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Let's hear it.
There are even some good-looking ones on
Nokia 130. That's a pretty-looking candy bar of a phone there.
I'm gonna have to look that up. Lumia 130.
Nokia 130.
Oh. How do you even know about this?
They announced it was relatively recent. They had good product placement. It was on Homeland. The guy threw it in a pool.
If you're gonna go dumb phone, you gotta go clamshell because you gotta have the open.
No, I do.
Totally agree with you.
I'm still rocking a clamshell.
Yeah, there's no way that I would ever settle for a candy bar phone if I was stuck doing a dumb phone.
I don't think you can get
no question about it.
You can marry modern phone and clamshell. I think if you want a dumb phone that's relatively modern looking, you have to go with candy bar slate form factor.
Justify your answer. Explain to me why you think that is, Stephen. Because I'm very confused about that.
It's our preconceptions about what these form factors mean. It's exactly like what you were saying about working on your smartphone there. We assume you're texting. When you have a phone that folds shut, it looks like it's 10, 15 years old. Now, granted, these the non-folding ones date back even further, but that's kind of like a timeless look. Smartphones don't fold either. Am I completely
excuse? Is the dearth of modern dumb phones an excuse for us to provide a nostalgic answer to the phone half of this thing? Because I want it to be.
Stick with the 7-year-old dumb phone I have now, a Nokia 23 something on Verizon, and it's a clamshell.
What about dumb phone sliders? We shouldn't toss them out the door. They had a nice heyday in 06,
My very first thought when thinking of this was that awesome one from the first Matrix. Yes.
Oh, amen.
You press the button and it click.
The spring-loaded action.
That can make any person cool. Just.
Yeah. Okay. So that's there. Damn it! See, my answer was going to be there. We go. That was a great phone. Samsung made I think 500 or 5,000 of those and sold them at Best Buy as an exclusive, and they came in like a tin lunchbox. They were on Sprint.
They didn't come in a FedEx envelope. That's awful.
We got to get one of those. If anyone out there has the Matrix phone, the Samsung Special Edition Matrix phone, let us know. I really want to do a throwback on it, even though it's not a smartphone. I think we can probably fit it in. We're far away from the intention of this thing, but anyway.
Tablet, the tablet side of that, I would just go with a bigger one. Definitely not a mini. I was gonna say Nexus 9, but I am having issues with my Nexus 9 right now, so maybe even like a Surface Pro 3.
That's a good answer. I like that answer. I want to take my answer back on the Surface.
All right, well, that was going to be my answer too, but Brandon, don't take your answer back yet, because I stayed away from the Surface Pro 3 for my answer, because yes, you can run the what's it called, BlueStacks, to run Android apps on Windows.
Why would you want to, though?
It's
terrible. You have Windows software.
Okay, yes, you have Windows software, but think about what you want to do with a tablet, Stephen. And Stephen, put yourself in the shoes of someone who's not you for a second for this. Think about you want to play a really sweet game. Like, I found a lot of cool games when I got the Nexus 9, and half of them I couldn't play because of the runtime, and half of them couldn't play because of Tegra. But if I had another tablet, I know, Stephen.
If you have a Surface Pro 3, you could play Far Cry 4, you could play GTA 5, you could play PC games on it.
Yeah, but okay, okay, fine. But that is a subset of the friends that I have talk about PC games, yes. Another subset are like, hey, did you get Candy Crush 17 yet? It's really awesome. And it's like, do I want to play that in Flash on a browser window? No, I don't want to do that. I want to play it natively on the tablet itself. But okay, Surface Pro 3 is probably
is a bitch, man.
Can I ask you guys another question?
Yeah.
Please.
What is your watch saying? Is it activating again accidentally?
No, the problem is in the studio here. There's no Sprint reception, so it keeps telling me it doesn't have service.
Oh, that's it's gonna be great for your battery life.
Although I will say this. Hold on, wait. Brandon, you can go ahead in a second, but I want to say something about Sprint. This thing has been surprisingly pleasantly on Sprint, and our producer uses Sprint, and he seems to be able to survive okay on it. So Sprint's not a bad network in Boston, from what I understand, from what I can see. Go ahead, Brandon.
Right. My question is this. If you had to purchase a phone today and you had to use it for the rest of your life, what would you get? And you had as much money as you need.
That's such a jerky question. Like what if I had as much money as I needed, but I have to use this phone for the rest of my life?
Yep. You get software updates, don't worry. You'll get
So in 2040, I'm going to have the equivalent of a Motorola bag phone today. Like
you have to. That's the game that we're playing. And yes, so yes. What is your answer?
Steven?
I'm still Googling for my answer here.
Wait. Wasn't there like a really well manufactured? Yeah. No, I know. And this is my answer for the tough spot too. Thanks, Brandon. The Motorola Aura, that phone we talk about sometimes with the side sliding, deploying
circular
mechanism,
display.
with the circular display and the exposed gears behind the glass window on the back.
How are you going to check your email on the Motorola Aura? I don't know how that can be your answer to both questions.
Because number one, the answer to tough spot is a dumb phone. It has to be a dumb phone. So there's the Motorola Aura. Number two, I know what you're saying, but I can check the mail on a dumb phone. I can just get a WAP browser, or whatever the modern equivalent is, to browse them .mobi sites. What's up, Steven? You found something interesting?
I found it. Now, you did not specify it had to be a cellular phone I'd use for the rest of my life. I would use a Trimline, which is a classic touch-tone wired handset.
A touch-tone? What? Start all over.
And if I had to go with something for the rest of my life, I would want... I mean, you're acknowledging that software will evolve. At some point, this will have unusable 20-year-old apps in it. I'm washing my hands of that situation. I want a comfortable, big old phone I can rest on my shoulder as I, sit in my rocking chair yelling at the kids to get off my porch. That is what I am doing.
You guys are really thinking a step ahead because you're right. If you choose a modern-day device that, is so reliant on software and will become obsolete undoubtedly in 2 years when it stops receiving software updates, you can't choose a phone like a Nexus 6 or an iPhone today.
You could get an HTC HD2.
It's an absurd question. And speaking of absurd questions, Kelvin Alonso asks something right in that vein, Brandon. If you could take aspects of several smartphones, hardware, software, design, camera, etc., put it into one smartphone, what would they be? Kelvin, I want to tell you that we are not going to answer this question because it's impossible to do so. We'd sit here for 45 minutes coming up with different features and stuff, and I'd be like, I'm going to take a Lumia 1020 sensor and put it on some screen that I have to whittle down my choices between
Project Aura, baby.
This would make a good essay,
Windows Phone UI, Android Core, all that kind of stuff. It's just impossible. So these they're difficult questions, but you know what? That was the most upvoted question. So people really want to build their dream phone, guys. People want to control their destiny. They don't want to be, confined to what's out there. They want to build their own phone, and I think next week we'll talk a little bit about a news story that might let you do that.
I wish we had like a phone mod community where people. I realize this is a difficult task, but like guys who build their own custom console portables, like they make an N64 and they wire it into like a big controller and carry it around. I want to see people who are Frankensteining phones, ripping the guts out of an iPhone, putting it into a Lumia body. That would be cool. I would love to see these.
Or wouldn't it be cool if there was this modular smartphone where, like, over time you could swap out modules?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. We didn't make it to the rundown this week, but maybe we'll talk about it next week. This Project Aura competitor.
Oh yeah.
I don't think we satisfied our tough spot requirements, but it don't matter because the clock beats everything.
And you make the rules, so you can do what you want.
Make the rules in this room.
This universe.
In this particular virtual space. It's time for listener mail. What in the name of shit was that? So that was the WebOS Bong Bong, preceded by a giant explosion. Awesome. I dig it. Christian Swank has our first piece of listener mail. And, gentlemen, there are 3 pieces of mail. There are 3 hosts. Who would care to read our first piece of listener mail? Hot tip, it's whoever has it on their screen.
Yeah. Christian writes, thanks for the great show, guys. I look forward to listening every week. Well, thank you for saying such nice things. Michael wanted to hear from a fighter pilot last week. I may not be one, but I have worked with quite a few of their fighters at Boeing. Speaking of which, Boeing is making modular, super secure, self-destructing phone called the Boeing Black Phone. My question, what do you see as the future of phone device security in the future, say 3 to 5 years out? Should OEMs start outsourcing this kind of security?
Listen, you guys need to answer that question because I'm looking. I'm at Boeing.com/black right now.
This thing up. I think it was announced back. There's a Wikipedia article on it. I think it was announced back in February. It's some ancient hardware. It's like dual core, quarter HD screen. And this is the phone that had that 30-pin auxiliary connector that made me think, what the hell is this? First designed in 2010. I don't trust the Boeing phone, and I'm sorry, Christian. I know you work at Boeing, or you know the guys at Boeing here. I wouldn't. You know how we hear all this stuff from the government about how we shouldn't trust Xiaomi because it's in bed with the Chinese and they're programming backdoors into things. Boeing is like the number 1 or 2 defense contractor for the U.S., and I think we should have the same concerns about the U.S. government. It's got to sound like
what are you, some kind of communist, Stephen?
But no, if we're going to give Xiaomi that sort of crap, we have to look at Boeing in the same light. And this, I think, this snowballs into the point about where we would see security going 3 to 5 years from now. There's great advancements on the software side, but when we're talking about if we're taking security seriously, you can't ignore the hardware. And until you have, there are huge issues right now with openness of the chips that power our phones. Qualcomm doesn't like to release the code that developers need to develop custom ROMs and things. Other companies behind SoCs will share to different degrees, but there's no one out there who just has open source hardware. This is the shadow mask we're using to fabricate our dies. This is how it works. This is a block diagram. Until you have that from the hardware to the software openness, you can't have really trustworthy security. And I don't think that's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. If anything, it's going to get more locked down. So I don't know how to answer that.
Pointing, Stephen. It's not a bad. It's not a bad piece of insight there. I can't say I disagree with you. All I know is that, I'm such a freaking sucker for branding. If you put a phone in front of my face that has the Boeing logo on it and looks even marginally badass, which this one does, probably I'm going to buy it and then buy a couple of your turbofan engines while I'm at it. Just because I can.
Hey, the security stuff.
Brandon, go ahead.
My motto is trust nobody, love everyone.
Wow, man, that is deep. That
is my stance on phone security right there.
Wow. I appreciate you sharing that with us. That makes me feel all kinds of nice. Mm-hmm. Patrick Drummond writes in, Christian, thank you for your mail. Patrick Drummond writes in with a different signature, so we'll call him what he wants to be called instead of his name. Sorry, Patrick. Would you care to see any future Nexus devices from Google involving companies you wouldn't really expect, such as Meizu, Huawei, and other brands? OnePlus. Just curious of what the Pocketnow team thinks of the possibilities. Love the podcast. You guys are great. Cheers, CyberPat. Thank you, Pat. I like this question because we haven't yet seen any Google Play devices from manufacturers that you wouldn't expect. Sony was kind of an outlier, but it was like, oh, okay, it's not out of the question. But, they're huge, and we just finished talking about that in Windows Phone with Blue. So, what do you think, guys? You want to see a OnePlus Google Play Edition phone, or
yes, please?
What's the benefit?
I think the benefit is escaping like a crappy skin, right? So OnePlus is probably a bad example. Who makes really cool Android hardware but really crappy Android software besides Samsung?
I see where you're going with that, son.
Yeah, and Sony's already in the cup, and who wouldn't be expected? Who makes? What about? Well, Huawei sometimes puts crazy skins on their stuff often.
I'm not so interested from the point of avoiding skinning, because I mean it's Nexus. This is what we expect anyway. And yeah, to make the greater impact between the Nexus and then comes other phones. But if we're considering the pricing for the Nexus 6 and how the days of the super affordable Nexus might be over, maybe this is the direction we need to go. Where like a phone from a company that's known for more affordable devices, if they get involved with the Nexus project, maybe we could see this come back with the $300 Nexus.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a good point, but I'm trying to think of who that would be, because we've seen Huawei.
OnePlus?
Yes, OnePlus, and OnePlus is a good example. But we've seen Huawei release some really affordable stuff like the Ascend Mate 2 that lasts forever, but then they release really good-looking stuff like the Ascend Mate 7 that's more expensive, though. So they're kind of
it isn't a guarantee that we have cheaper.
Right.
You know, I'd like to see the Verizon Eclipse brand be put. Ellipses. I'm sorry.
Great call. Absolutely. Yes. No question. What about somebody was asking us in the Q&A if we have that supermarket brand over here.
The supermarket brand?
Yeah. No, it's in Europe. Come on. I'm trying to find it. It's like at the bottom because no one else seems to care. I think it's Tesco. Yes, do you guys have Tesco in the U.S.?
No.
Tesco Huddle 2 tablet is an extremely popular 129-pound budget tablet here in the U.K. It is actually really good for the money, and I'd personally pick it as an alternative to the Nexus 7 since it's 100 pounds cheaper.
Wow, look at this thing. It's spelled Huddle without an E. Huddle 2. Huddle phone.
I was at a press event where some guys had this, and they were saying that it's like their number one pick for the technology of the year at the time, because it is so cheap and because it's apparently not crap. So
kind of innards does it have? I'm trying to say.
I don't know, but it's reminding me of the HP. It's on the screen right now,
it's
actually.
Atom powered.
8.3-inch Full HD and Intel Atom. Yeah.
2 gigs
of RAM, though. 8 hours of declared battery life, so who knows what the actual figure is. Obviously, the full Google ecosystem. And Blinkbox, of course.
What the hell's Blinkbox?
Your endless source of entertainment. No, that seems cool. This seems like in the same exact vein as the HP, that HP like netbook they just dropped on everyone for $200. It's not the Surf, but it's the
I know what you mean.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I like this category. I think this is a cool category to keep an eye on, even though it makes me a little bit frightened. It makes me a little apprehensive about the increased commoditization of tech. I guess we're at a point where we don't have a luxury smartphone or tablet brand. We're not anywhere close to that yet. But you know, it used to be that all smartphones and tablets were luxury items. No, we don't.
Well, who's the one that makes those crazy? It's my type. The $14,000, and like they had the first ones with the sapphire.
Virtu.
Yeah, Virtu.
Yeah. No, I mean that. Well, that exists. So what I'm saying is that we're not at a point. And Brandon has 5 minutes left, so we got to move this on. You know, we're not at a point where we're lacking luxury brands anymore. They do exist, but we're getting to a point where, you know, everything is increasingly marginalized. Everything is cheaper. Everything is lower spec. Everything's more affordable, and that's great.
$25,000.
That's a little disappointing.
That's
as long as the high end doesn't go away. I don't want this to become a monolithic type of atmosphere. Let's move on to last piece of listener mail because we got to get Brandon out that door. Brandon, would you like to read the last piece of listener mail?
I would love to, except that the words do not appear on my screen. I don't know.
No problem. Well, I've got it handy, so I'll read it. You can help me answer it, Brandon, because you've had the Nexus 6. Hi, I'm Alex. Hi, Alex. And I'm just annoyed by the Nexus 6 lowest few notches brightness. Turns to a pinkish salmon color. It looks weird. Is it a hardware issue, or can it be fixed via software update? I noticed the Note 4 can adjust saturation levels and screen settings, so I wonder how the screen dims can be manipulated by software as well on the Nexus 6. Brandon, did you have the pink screen issue at the lowest brightness level?
You know, I never turn it down that low, but I have to imagine. I have to imagine that it's a hardware issue because you're dealing with brightness, which is a very very binary thing: brightness low, brightness high, and so I can't see how it's going to be fixed. I mean, there's been there are other phones in the past that had weird tints at low brightnesses, and unfortunately they just can't be fixed.
Yeah.
And also it's good for the people that like pink.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think it's a software issue, although it might be mitigated by software. I think I like Ars Technica's conjecture. Did this on purpose. They wanted to deliver a very, very low nit count, so that you could emulate that Note 4 effect of being able to read in the dark and not kill your eyes. But they were not able to do it with their AMOLED technology of their panel supplier, so they just said, well, screw it. If it's going to be red, it'll be red, but at least we'll have that low brightness. Because I'll tell you, on the Moto X, without a third-party app, you cannot get anywhere near that dim, and it sucks to read on at night. So I like that explanation, and I am going to accept it. We have asked Motorola for comment, and they have not given us one.
I have the feeling that I'm not sure what the root cause is, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this can almost certainly be fixed in software. We've seen issues in the past with certain phones where the displays didn't look great, and by doing some, admittedly it's not user accessible, but some very low-level kernel-level stuff. I mean, you have to root to be doing this. I think it was with the Nexus 4, there was a hack to make the screen look more like it did on the G2. We just saw this G3 hacked kernel to remove that software effect that was doing the text sharpening. I know that's apples and oranges, but you can have a pronounced effect on even the color temperature by doing software-level tweaks. This is also going out on a limb, but it's reminding me, we're talking Nexus and brightness. My God, my Nexus 9 is driving me crazy with, you set it to low brightness levels like this, and it's constantly flickering. Like it can't choose between two brightness levels.
Oh, yeah, the auto brightness in the Nexus 9 is
crazy.
Just nuts. Yeah.
I'm hoping that's software as well, and that can be resolved, and not just a wonky sensor.
Yeah. I'd love to talk more about this, but I don't want to go any further because I'll forget that Brandon has to pull the ejection handle, and then he'll stay with us until we auger in to the frozen tundra. So, Brandon, I want to let you go now, if that's all right with you.
All right. So thanks for having me, guys. Fun as always.
Brandon, thank you for coming by. Sorry about the technical issues at the top of the show, but I'm really glad you were here to help us iron them out. And next time you come on, we'll have you another thought thread, and maybe we'll reserve that as a special feature for you.
Brandon's deep thoughts.
Brandon's opinions. That's what we'll call it.
Okay.
or a better name. You let us know.
Yeah, you let us know. And we'll see you soon.
One thing, can I just do a mini drum solo on the way out?
I wish you would. Everyone,
a Miniman drum solo.
Please, silence, please, for the percussive work of Brandon Miniman.
Fresh.
You are one of the more absurd people I know, and you are gone.
That's
are
why
already
you're
gone.
Pocketnow Weekly, folks.
Drop the mic.
Entertainment everywhere.
Well, some people in the Q&A have been waiting all show to get their questions answered, so I just want to hit a few of these very, very quickly before we head out the door, which we do have to do. Someone was asking if Simple Mobile was a good carrier. Who was this? Yeah, there we go. This is from PishV, or PI5HVI. I'm headed to the U.S. in a month. What carrier should I choose? Does Simple Mobile have good coverage? If you're coming to the U.S. and you're coming permanently, then you'll want to do a postpaid carrier probably, like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, or T-Mobile. If you can get that, if you're going to become a U.S. resident permanently.
Simple Mobile is it's a T-Mobile MVNO, so keep in mind it will have the same issues with coverage that T-Mobile has. Right. It's not as good as Verizon or anything. It's serviceable in some places. I can't get anything better than Edge data where I am right now, so be aware that will be issues in fringe areas.
You're in a fairly rural area, though, right?
I am.
Yeah, so I mean, I wrote a piece on T-Mobile about 6 or 8 months ago about trying them on again after years away and being quite surprised.
Yeah.
It is. Then again, I live in Boston. I think between us, Stephen, we have a pretty good cross-section. I live in one of the best covered areas, I think, in probably the whole country. When I have to test a phone's reception, I can't do it. Like, I can't find a no-signal area, literally, because even the subways are covered now. And you live in exactly the opposite situation. So, yeah, I think it depends. It all depends on where you go, Pishvi. But yes, Simple Mobile.
The
Simple
prices
Mobile, I
are
know
good.
they have good rate plans. Yeah, and also you might want to check out US Mobile. They're brand new, depending on how long you're staying.
Is that the GSM Mobile?
It is. Yeah, it's the GSM Nation.
GSM Nation.
Yeah. What do you think about the new HTC M9? Honestly, it's just way too early for me to even think about it. I mean, Steven's been reporting on it. Steven, what do you think about it?
Yeah, there have been a couple of fan renders that have looked interesting. There's no real hard data yet. Right? Yeah, and there's some speculation on the hardware side. We don't know anything for real yet.
There's nothing to think about yet. There's nothing concrete to think about yet.
But I mean, God, if we're following last year's schedule, we're really only a couple months away from getting some real information, or maybe 3 months away. When did we have the One M8 launch? Was that in March, or I know the Galaxy S5 was right at MWC.
The One M8 was at the end of March, top of April.
Okay,
and
so maybe a little further out, but another quarter.
Yeah. And then I like this question. Which is more important for you guys, design, build quality, or specifications? From Kenneth Rea.
Oh.
Design and build quality for me, man.
Yeah,
you put a Snapdragon 400 in a really tight, in a device with really tight tolerances, and maybe a leather back or some kind of exotic material, or even the Sharp Aquos Crystal with an innovative bezel-less screen design. I mean, that'll easily impress me.
Yeah.
Steven,
especially we're at the point now with silicon that even a mid-range device is wildly powerful. And I mean, if you could live with a flagship a year or two ago, you're going to get the same experience from a super budget phone now. Definitely, I want a phone that looks good, that feels solid. More importantly, feels like I'm not going to destroy it. I want a phone that has some durability to it, not just like a super armored, covered in an inch of impact-resistant plastic. I just want a nice, well-built, solid phone.
Steven? I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was a BS bit of guttural reaction that I laid on you, because I was reading the next question. Benjamin McDonald. In Sweden, the least priced smartwatch, if you don't count the Samsung Galaxy Gear, and I got a Moto G, is the LG G Watch Original at $231.30 in US dollars. Is it worth it?
It sure doesn't seem it now. Well, we just got Black Friday. The first G Watch was going, I think, below 100 in a bunch of places, wasn't it?
And it should be below 100. I mean, it doesn't. It shouldn't be more expensive than that. It's the screen is not impressive. The design is very, very basic. And
I've been surprised that we haven't seen an Android Wear model come in permanently as a under $200 option. I really thought that that Asus one was going to be like a $150. That was going to be the new budget.
Well, it's $199. It's $199.
I know, but we've already had $199 smartwatches.
Yeah, Benjamin, I would find a different one for you. I would either wait for a lower price model to hit.
Find someone in the U.S. to ship it to you on the sly. I mean, don't break international customs.
Right. No, not that we. I'm trying to see if there's a good one to close on, but it looks like there's all kinds of flashing lights in front of us, and it looks like we're about to get
my lights just flickered here. I'm a little nervous.
Did they really?
Yeah, it's not even like windy or anything. This is weird. Maybe I didn't pay my electricity bill.
Oh my God, guys! I thank you very much for the Q&A questions. Do appreciate it. And I'm going to ask Jules just for clarification very quickly. I'll go ahead and hold right here, and I'm muting the old Yeti. We're about to do the outro, and so the viewer count is about to drop into the basement.
Yep.
I can't mute the Yeti and keep the audio track going though.
That's cute.
What's cute? What, our technical difficulties? mute myself on the...
I always get played by those GSM sounding... I have a GSM sounding ringtone, and it still makes me think it's...
You know, we got to get the license for Nuts so we can play that one.
Is that another Ally Spag song?
All right. Hey, Steven?
Yes, Al.
You ready to get out of here?
I could go.
I wish that we would do that. Listeners, this is a track called Radiation. It's a ringtone from Android smartphones. It's from Ali Spagnola. She's really cool. Go to alispagnola.com. Go to youtube.com/AliSpags. Her website is linked in the description below. Till next time, everybody. That's going to do it for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly, produced by Jules Wang. And we're going to figure this out next time. I think we did really well for having literally everything new.
Make no changes. I want to be exactly like this next time.
Jules Wang tweets about football, rockets, journalism, and more at Greenpoint0 on Twitter. He's spinning the vinyl as well at wers.org. Also, be sure to find the hosts on the internet. Steven's missing out on all the prime haps at Steven Schenk. Brandon's bargaining about new phone buys at Brandon Miniman. And I'm oversharing and underwhelming at Captain Two Phones. Pocketnow is also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Google+. And again, if you enjoy the podcast, maybe if you regularly enjoy the podcast, you didn't enjoy this one, give us a pass. Help us spread the word. Leave a review. iTunes, Stitcher, Xbox, wherever podcasts are heard. As always, we thank you so much for listening. We thank our sponsor at Squarespace. We thank our hosts at WERS. And we'll be back with more Mobile Tech Talk next week.
Stop rocking out.